Hi everyone, this is Marissa Gifford here. I'm here to do a before and after video for you of this image that is actually not my own. I was thinking of doing one of these for the blog here, and I got to feeling really bored with my own work, and sometimes it's just nice to edit someone else's pictures. So I asked for submissions and on the Clickin' Moms forum, so I could work on someone else's image. So this sweet image is from a fellow Clickin' Mom. Her name is Anda Panciuk. I hope I said that right. She is a portrait photographer out of Montreal, Canada, and I just really love this image and the moment in this image. I'm guessing it's maybe her daughter, and just the way she's framed so beautifully in front of the window and holding that cute little skirt, it just struck me as so girly and typical of childhood, playing dress up. I am a mom of 3 boys, so I don't get to edit a lot of images of girls unless it's for a client. So I loved this one. It really drew me in. So the first thing I'm going to do for this image is I'm going to increase the exposure, and I'm going to bring that up fairly significantly to about there. And then I'm going to increase the contrast just a bit so that it doesn't get too hazy on me yet. And that looks good there. And then I'm going to warm it up just a touch here with the white balance. I always like to get proper exposure before adjusting the white balance, because if you do the white balance first and then adjust the exposure, 9 times out of 10 you'll still have to fiddle with the white balance. So I just like to cut out that extra step and just do the exposure first. So I don't typically do a lot of editing in ACR, just fixing white balance, and usually just the first couple sliders here. Sometimes I'll fiddle with the highlights or the shadows or the blacks, but usually I stick to just these top 4 sliders here. And the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to straighten this one with the straighten tool. So this one you just kind of drag and drop across a line that you want to be straight. So I'm going to take that right across the top of the windowsill there, and it'll just adjust it really simply for me and pretty accurately. All right, so from there I'm going to open this image into Photoshop and just zoom in just a little. All right, well, maybe not that much. Okay, so then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop the image just a little bit more. I just find this part down here, the rug, a little bit distracting, so I don't really want that in my image. So I'm just gonna, with my crop tool, sorry about that, there we go, just pull that up a little bit. All right, now the first thing I like to do to my images, usually when I'm starting out, is adding a little bit of contrast. And I like to do this with a levels layer. You can use a curves layer as well, a brightness contrast layer, because it's not really about the layer itself, it's about the blend mode. So I'm going to switch this into soft light blend mode. And my default starting place for this is usually 30%. So I'm just, by hitting the number keys up at the top, you can adjust 0 is 100, 3 is 30. So I'm going to add that contrast right there. And I like to rename my layers as I'm going, so if I need to go back and adjust, I can find the layer quickly that I'm looking for. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to blow out these windows entirely. You can see there's some detail here from the trees. You maybe noticed in ACR there was a lot of red on the screen, and that was indicating the areas that were blown. And when I'm shooting indoors or when I'm editing indoors, I don't mind at all if the windows are blown. Oftentimes I prefer it because I feel like it gets rid of distractions within the frame, unless the outside, or what's outside the window, unless it's adding to the story of the image, I prefer it to be blown out. So I'm going to do this by just creating a new layer here, and I'm going to zoom in and just get, with my color picker, it's a white brush, it's pretty close to white. If it was blown out, it's white. So I'm just gonna, oops, make sure I've got my brush at 100% opacity. And on this blank layer, I'm just gonna paint out these trees here. I just feel like it gives a cleaner look to the image, and then people aren't left wondering or distracted by what's outside, because the trees outside really aren't part of this image. It's this sweet little girl holding her skirt out like she's just, you know, role playing and maybe, you know, pretending she's a ballerina or a princess or something. And it doesn't really have anything to do with the trees outside. So I'm going to just kind of come into the edges here as carefully as I can. And they're pretty faint. So some people, you know, maybe think this is overkill, but I like to be as detailed as I can. Oops. So I bled over a little bit of the windowsill, so I just did a Command or Control Z to undo that real quick. And when I'm done here, I'll go ahead and toggle the layer so you can see the difference. It's fairly subtle. These trees aren't like big green blobs. They're not given any color casts or anything. But again, I just feel like it cleans up the frame just a little bit more and gives it just that little extra bit of polish. So let's see if I missed anything here. Looks pretty good. So you can see when I toggle that on and off, those distractions just disappear. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of a cool tone or haze. And the way I like to do that, it feels almost like it's a snowy, cold day outside, but she's inside nice and warm. So I just wanted to add a little bit of tone for this one. So, oops, let me rename this layer. Blown windows. And this one I'm going to rename Cool Tone. So one of my favorite ways to add tones to an image is to actually put it in a blend mode and tone it from within that blend mode. So I'm going to put it into soft light, and you'll notice that it's going to add a little bit more contrast, and I'm going to set that down to 30%. But then I'm going to go into the individual channel, and I'm going to go into the blue channel and add a little bit of blue here and a little bit down here to the output slider. Now, what I love about this is it makes the tone so much more subtle than if I had left this in normal mode. It becomes obviously very cool, and that's more cool than I would want it. So I like leaving it in soft light mode because it gives a little bit of contrast and the toning is so much more subtle. You can see the difference there. So that's my favorite trick for toning an image. And then I'm going to add a little bit of haze to this one. She's wearing pink. It's kind of a fun girly thing. So I'm going to add a little bit of a pink haze here with a solid color layer. And you can click around until you find one you like with your color picker there. I have one that I've already decided that I like, so I'm just going to type it in and name it Pink Haze. And I'm going to put this one also to soft light mode. You can see I like soft light mode. And I'm going to take it down to 20%. I want it to be subtle, but something to enhance it. And I feel like pink complements the image very well. It's a feminine image. It matches what she's already wearing in her clothing. And so I feel like it complements that very well. When you're doing hazes or tones with solid color layers, the layer blending mode that you choose is really going to determine how hazy or how intense the color is. Like, for example, if I'd left this just at 20% in normal mode, it's still hazy, but it's a little bit more muddy than I want for this. But you can see the color is a lot more apparent. Now, if I were to put it to lighten mode, it's still got that hazy, airy look, but lighten mode specifically also targets the shadows of an image. So this is a fun one to use if you have lots of heavy shadows in an image that you want to tone. Screen takes it even brighter, and the color is even less intense. But I like soft light. It's a little bit more clean, but you can still see a subtle lifting in the shadows down there as I toggle on the bench down here. Now, I think the last thing I'm going to do for this image is I'm going to burn these highlights just a bit. So I'm going to come back down here to my background layer and duplicate it with Command or Control J. And I'm going to rename it Burn. So that's my burn layer, and I'm going to select my burn tool. You can choose it over here. You can hit the O key in your on your keyboard. And I'm just going to I start at a low opacity, a low percentage, because I don't want it to get overly crazy. I'm just going to burn those just a little bit so it's not quite so eye-catching. I don't really want the eye to be drawn there as much as I want it to be drawn to this sweet little girl and the framing of the windows. I think it's just beautiful. So I'll just do that, and you can see just a subtle difference down here. And that would be my final edit for this image. From where we started out, it was slightly underexposed and a little bit cool, and I straightened it, warmed it up, increased the exposure, and then blew out the windows, and we added some contrast down here. It was just plain colorless contrast, and then a cool tone contrast, and topped it off with a little bit of a pink haze for this image. So I hope you found that helpful, and I hope you learned a new trick or two, and thanks for joining me.